Well, from the Olympics to the WNBA, female athletes continue to break records and break barriers as well. But there are still visibility challenges with female athletes.
There are also challenges from a business perspective. This includes merchandise. A new study found 79% of fans said they would buy more women's sports merchandise if it were available. And to help break this down, we're joined by Charlene Mitchell and Mark Esley. Thank you both of you for coming in this morning. Let's start with you, Charlene. We saw Simone Biles there. I mean, you and I have been watching a lot of Olympics. We're talking about that. You have Caitlin Clark in the WNBA. They're really behind a major shift in popularity and how people are consuming their sports. How has consuming women's sports really evolved over the years?
Well, I think, on the heels of the Olympics and the NBA, WNBA draft and all the women that we're seeing, I think there's this emergence of excitement. There's so much excitement in the air. There have always been women athletes, but not until recently have we seen the hype and the excitement and the getting. I don't know if these young women athletes are better than the ones before, like a Wilma Rudolph and all those folks. It's just, I think we're emerging into everybody's being recognized. And it's going to be a bonanza for sports agents, marketing executives, and public relations agencies. So many opportunities.
Yeah, and so Charlene mentions bonanza, right, and agents, and you start to hear cha-ching, right? You remember a few years ago with Simone Biles when they came out with a clothing line at Athleta, and young girls everywhere were snatching it up. You couldn't even get it. From a business perspective, how does this change in terms of the availability of women's sports merchandise as opposed to men's?
It's going to increase the opportunities for women, hands down. I think historically, yes, men have controlled that marketplace, but what's happening with the increase in exposure of the Caitlin Clarks of the world, Simone Biles of the world, you're seeing a lot of the women athletes are slowly beginning to get clothing lines. In fact, there's a young lady over in WNBA. She now has a contract for a pair of sneakers or gym shoes as well. So to answer your question, you're going to continue to see the increases compared to over the last 2 or 3 years.
Charlene, when it comes to money, obviously there's still a huge disparity.
Yes.
Now, how does that gap get closed, and how does it close relatively quickly?
I don't know if it can close quickly unless networks like CBS, NBC, and all the rest, start airing women's sports. And we can see, after the draft and the WNBA started getting on television, they say the ratings were skyrocketing. People were watching. So if we don't see women's sports, we don't think about it. I'm a woman, and I never thought. We used to have a WNBA team here, the Shock, and I went to one game. So if we don't support women's sports, they're not going to get there. But I think what's going to happen is some of these athletes, are going to get endorsements, not just sneakers and gear, but right now, if women watch commercials for hair products and cosmetics, it's always been the stars of stage and screen. You're in the movies, you're a model. But now, I think you're going to see people like, the ones that we've talked about.
Actually, Sha'Carri Richardson, the sprinter, I think it was Olay or something I saw a commercial for.
Already?
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about.
That's the biggest difference that you're going to see, though. It's the exposure. What's happening historically, women did not get the same level of exposure.
Sure.
And now you have the major networks are broadcasting the games, and obviously the women are just really doing it in the Olympics. And the young women are seeing it, the young men are seeing it. Me coming up, we were never exposed to women's clothes, right? In terms of the apparel that they wear. Now there is a demand for women products, and you start to see that. You mentioned in your opening comments, 69 and 70% of the people still can't get access to women's clothes. That number is going to continue to increase as the Olympics go on and as these athletes continue to get the exposure.
So you really can't have this discussion without talking about the gender pay gap, and we've talked about that before overall, obviously. But how can we begin to even address that when it comes to men's and women's sports?
You've got to continue to invest in women's sports. Quite frankly, you've got to take those dollars and spread them out equally. Unfortunately, those dollars are not being spread equally. Men still are the dominant in terms of the pay grade. Women are still short in that regard. You've got to figure out how to invest those resources in women and begin to spread those resources appropriately across all pay grades, not just to men, but also make sure women get the appropriate opportunities as well.
All right, Charlene, from your perspective, then, what are some of the biggest hurdles that women athletes and women's sports leagues still face?
I think the itty bitty stuff like, oh, her hair. Look at her hair. You know, it's not.
So
she's
too much
she's
judging on
flipping,
appearance.
She's up in the air, yes. Or her nails weren't done. You know, that kind of thing. Nobody's looking at a man's toenails when he jumps in
Thankfully.
the pool,
Yeah.
or his fingernails, or his. Hopefully, everyone is clean and polished. But you know, they're there to do their sport, and I think we nitpick with women a lot, and many times it's the women who are doing the nitpicking. Not so much the guys. The guys may
You
be
got
thinking
that
it.
right. You got that right.
Women are bigger critics of the women than men. And so I think it's going to take women, and I think we're seeing that we're supporting our young ladies a lot more, because we see that. I mean, I look at the Olympics and I'm like, how did they do that?
Exactly.
How did they do that? So I'm not looking at her hair. I'm not looking at all those little things that don't really matter. I'm looking at that talent and that skill and what it takes to get there. So I think collectively, men and women, watching women's sports, and the media promoting it more and spreading those dollars around, I think we're on the right track.
And we saw that just a couple of days ago with Simone Biles kind of clapping back at that
Yes.
judgment, which sparked a lot of discussion, I think, in many
Yes.
households.
I mean,
you
we
know.
even had a woman who was one of the judges or head of the judges saying Simone Biles shouldn't be allowed to be in the Olympics anymore because nobody else has a chance. Well,
Yeah.
get better.
Get better, that's right.
Get
You
better.
can't ban
Did you-
people 'cause
did you
they-
say
Setting
that
that
to
the best.
Did you say that to Babe Ruth, Willie Mays?
I think
You
the
know?
bottom line is judge these athletes like what they are, athletes. And the whole situation with Simone Biles last week, they talked about her hair, and like you said, she clapped back at that.
She did.
Absolutely. She is the GOAT.
Yes, she
She's
is.
the greatest of all time, hands down. I'm amazed when I look at her. I'm amazed when I look at the other female athletes out there and what they're doing. And so, me as a male, and all of us men out here, if you're looking at me right now, I'm going to challenge you to support these women athletes. They are outstanding. They deserve to get the level of equity in terms of pay and support from all of us, because they are making a huge dent. They're changing culture, they're changing society and the social norms. Support all of our athletes. In particular, let's support our female athletes.
Society takes a long time to change. Hopefully this one changes quicker than in other aspects.
We will leave it on that note. Mark S. Lee and Charlene, thank you so much for being here
And
this
thank
morning.
you for addressing this important topic.
Such an insightful topic for sure. Great discussion this morning.